Chris Gotterup was 5 shots behind. He was not even supposed to be talked about that morning. And then something happened on that golf course that made grown men cry on live television. If you clicked on this video because you saw that headline about Chris Gotterup crying after his round, you are about to understand exactly why this moment broke the internet within hours, and why golf fans are calling it one of the most emotional finishes they have seen in years. Before we go further, if you love real sports stories, underdog comebacks, and moments where emotion takes over logic, hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel exists for exactly this kind of story, and there is a lot more coming. Turn on notifications too, because you do not want to miss what happens next in this young golfer's career. Now let's get into it, because what happened at TPC Deere Run this weekend is not just a golf story. It is a story about 2 brothers, a promise made 4 years ago, a letter nobody remembers writing, and a final round that will be replayed for years. Stay with me for the next 15 seconds, because right after this, you are going to hear about the moment Chris Gotterup dropped to his knees on the driving range, the water ball that ended another man's dream in the cruelest way possible, and the emotional press conference where a grown professional athlete could not even finish his sentence without breaking down. This story has heartbreak, redemption, family, and one of the greatest final rounds of golf played this year. If you stay till the end, you will understand why people are saying this was not just a win, it was closure. Let's rewind. Sunday morning, TPC Deere Run, Silvis, Illinois. The leaderboard did not have Chris Gotterup's name anywhere near the top. Lucas Glover and Lee Hodges were sitting comfortably at the summit, 5 shots clear of the field, looking like they had already sealed the tournament in their minds. Nobody in that gallery, nobody watching on television, nobody inside the CBS broadcast booth was thinking about Gotterup as a serious contender to win. He was somewhere in the chasing pack, a name among many, the kind of player commentators mentioned briefly before moving on to talk about the leaders. But golf has a strange habit of humbling the people who feel too comfortable, and rewarding the ones who refuse to accept where they are sitting. Chris Gotterup teed off almost an hour before the leaders. That detail matters more than people realize. An hour before Glover and Hodges even picked up their clubs for the final round, Gotterup was already out there, quietly building something that nobody saw coming. The front 9 started fast. Birdie after birdie. 5 of them in the opening 5 holes. The only blemish was a missed up and down at the par 5 second, which in any other round might have been forgotten, but on this day it almost felt like the only breath he allowed himself before continuing the assault. By the time he made the turn, the leaderboard app on thousands of phones was refreshing itself, and golf fans who had been half paying attention suddenly sat up straight. This was not a normal Sunday charge. This was something historical building in real time. He kept adding circles to his scorecard. Birdie at 10. Birdie at 13. Birdie at 14. And then, on the 17th hole, a par 5 that decides tournaments more often than any other hole on that course, he drained a 14-foot putt for birdie that sent a jolt through the entire property. Fans who had walked out to watch Glover and Hodges suddenly found themselves crowding around a leaderboard trying to figure out who this man shooting all these birdies actually was, and why his name was suddenly at the very top. 9 under par. 0 bogeys. A round of 62. 20 under for the tournament. It tied the lowest closing round ever shot by a John Deere Classic champion, matching a mark set only a few years earlier. And he did all of it without a single mistake on his card. Not one dropped shot across 18 holes, on a Sunday, under real pressure, chasing a 5-shot deficit. Now here is where the story stops being about golf swings and turns into something far more human. Chris Gotterup finished his round before the leaders had even reached the turn. That meant he had to walk off that final green not knowing if he had won, not knowing if there would be a playoff, not knowing anything except that he had just played the best round of his life when it mattered most. He walked to the practice range to wait. Think about that for a second. You just shot the round of your career, the round that could define your entire season, and instead of celebrating, you have to go stand on a range and hit balls into nothing, waiting for other men on the course to decide your fate for you. That is when the real drama began, because out on the 18th hole, a different story was unfolding, one that would end in heartbreak for a man named Ben Kohles. Ben Kohles had never won on the PGA Tour. Not once, in 120 career starts. Think about that number. 120 tournaments as a professional, and still searching for that first win. He had come agonizingly close before, 2 years earlier at another tournament, where he stood in a similar position with a similar chance, and watched it slip away in a playoff. Golf can be one of the cruelest sports in existence, because it does not care how many times you have almost gotten there. It only cares about the shot in front of you right now. Kohles birdied the 16th hole to tie Gotterup at the top of the leaderboard. 2 holes to play. He needed to finish 1 under par across those final 2 holes to win outright, or even par to force a playoff. The 17th hole, a par 5, is a hole where the tournament is often decided, and Kohles made it through with a scrappy par, nothing spectacular, but enough to keep his dream alive heading to the last hole. And then came the 18th. He struck his tee shot beautifully, right down the middle of the fairway. For a moment it looked like destiny was finally going to reward him. His playing partner, Lucas Glover, hit his approach shot first, and just seconds later Kohles, seemingly rushed by the pressure of the moment, sent his approach into the air. Golf fans who were watching live say you could see it drifting the wrong way almost immediately. It clipped the front left fringe of the green, kicked further left, and rolled directly into the water hazard guarding that side of the green. In one single moment, 120 tournaments of waiting, of almost getting there, of coming so close, evaporated into a pond in Illinois. He was given a penalty drop, and by a strange twist of luck his ball actually landed on a sprinkler head, allowing him to move it to the fringe. But the damage was already done psychologically. He needed a lengthy putt just to save par and force a playoff. From roughly 35 feet, he gave it everything, and it slid past the hole. Then, needing a short bogey putt to at least save some dignity in the finish, he missed that too, carding a double bogey 6 on the final hole of the tournament. Just like that, without swinging another club, without doing anything else, Chris Gotterup was the champion of the John Deere Classic. He was standing on the driving range when the news reached him. No trophy ceremony walk, no dramatic final putt of his own to celebrate. Just a phone, a radio, someone telling him what had happened on the 18th green. And in that moment, the emotion that had been building inside him for years, not just that week, not just that round, but years, came pouring out all at once. He dropped to his knees. His brother Patrick, who had been carrying his bag all week, was right there beside him, and the two of them embraced in a moment that cameras caught, and that would go on to be shared across every golf platform on the internet within hours. Now here is the part of the story that turns this from just another PGA Tour win into something that resonates on a completely different level. Chris Gotterup's regular caddy, a man named Brady Stockton, was not on the bag that week. Why? Because Brady had just become a father. He was on paternity leave, home with his newborn child, and Gotterup needed someone he trusted to step in for one of the biggest weeks of his season. He did not hire a stranger. He did not bring in some experienced tour caddy looking to make a paycheck. He called his own brother. Patrick Gotterup works in sports marketing, a completely different career path, nothing to do with professional caddying on the biggest stage in golf. But Patrick had actually caddied for Chris years earlier, back on the Korn Ferry Tour in 2023, the developmental tour where players fight and claw for a chance to reach the PGA Tour itself. That was the year Chris finally earned his PGA Tour card. Patrick had been there for that struggle, that grind, those long nights and cheap hotels chasing a dream that so many golfers never actually reach. So when Brady needed time off to be with his new baby, Chris did not think twice. He called his brother, who had to take actual time off work, actual paid time off from his real job, just to walk 18 holes a day carrying a golf bag for his younger brother. Think about the layers stacked on top of each other in this single moment. A brother sacrificing his own vacation days. A caddy on paternity leave with his newborn. A player who has now won 5 times on the PGA Tour but who still cries like it is his very first victory every single time. And a tournament that means something deeply personal to him, far beyond what any casual fan watching at home could ever fully understand. Because here is the piece of this story that makes it truly special. This was not just any tournament for Chris Gotterup. 4 years earlier, back in 2022, fresh off finishing his college career at Oklahoma, Gotterup had almost no status anywhere on any professional tour. He was essentially a nobody in the world of professional golf, one of thousands of talented college players who turn pro every single year and disappear into obscurity because they simply never get the opportunity to prove themselves against the very best. He wrote directly to the tournament director of the John Deere Classic, a man named Claire Peterson, and he asked for a sponsor exemption, a golden ticket into the field that tournaments occasionally give to promising young players who otherwise would have no path into the event. In that letter, or in that conversation, Gotterup made a promise. He told Peterson he would not regret giving him the chance. He backed up his words. In his 5th professional start ever, with almost nothing on the line except his own reputation, he finished tied for 4th place. At the time, he called it the biggest tournament result of his entire life, because he had no status anywhere else, no other tour, no safety net. That single result at that single tournament kick-started everything that followed. Since that week in 2022, Chris Gotterup has referred to the John Deere Classic as his fifth major championship, his own personal words, a tournament that occupies a different emotional space in his heart compared to every other event on the calendar. Even though he now had to fly overseas immediately afterward to defend his Scottish Open title, and even though skipping this tournament in favor of extra preparation time would have been the easier, more comfortable choice for a player of his current stature, he chose loyalty instead. He came back, year after year, to a tournament that gave him his start when nobody else would. And this year, that loyalty paid off in the most emotional way imaginable. When he finally sat down for his post-round interview with CBS Sports reporter Amanda Balionis, the tears had not stopped. He tried to explain what this tournament meant to him, tried to put into words a feeling that 4 years of gratitude had built inside him, and he simply could not get through it without breaking down again. He talked about how much this event meant to him, how kind they had always been to him, how special it was to have his brother out there with him for this particular win. Amanda Balionis herself was visibly moved by the moment, and golf commentators watching from the broadcast booth were openly emotional as well. This was not manufactured television drama. This was a raw, unfiltered human moment captured live in front of millions of viewers. In his official Champions press conference afterward, when a reporter brought up that letter he wrote 4 years earlier asking for a sponsor exemption, the tears welled up in his eyes yet again. He talked about how much he genuinely loves this particular tournament, how they have always treated him so kindly, and how meaningful it was to have his brother there sharing that moment with him. He mentioned that Patrick had to take actual time off from his real job, his real career outside of golf, just to be there for him that week, and he hoped his brother might even get one more day of time off to accompany him further. This victory marked Chris Gotterup's 5th career win on the PGA Tour, and remarkably, his 3rd win of this season alone, matching only one other player on the entire tour for most individual victories this year. 4 of his 5 career wins have now come within the last 12 months, an absolutely staggering rate of success for a 26-year-old who, not too long ago, had almost no status on any professional tour whatsoever. Let's talk about the bigger picture of his career, because the John Deere Classic victory did not happen in isolation. It is the latest chapter in a rise that has been building steadily for the past year and a half. A little over a year ago, Chris Gotterup won the Genesis Scottish Open in dramatic fashion, holding off none other than Rory McIlroy, one of the biggest names in the entire sport, on a golf course across the Atlantic Ocean.